All right, good evening, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started. I don't have a... That's pretty small. All right. Thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. Tonight is a joint training session between our Planning Commission and the City Council. It's all to learn about Robert's Rules of Order. This is how we manage our meetings, and we have a great instructor with us, Tisha from Jurassic Parliament. I'll turn it over to her in just a moment. A couple of housekeeping items. If you are going to ask a question today, and it is meant to be interactive, so please feel free to raise your hand and the instructor will call on you. But when you go to ask your question, make sure your mic is turned on. All of you in this room should know how to do that, but if you don't remember, it is the person button. Red is on. There is no queuing tonight, so we'll go straight into to live mode. If you have a handheld mic, green is on. And I know we have handheld mics at the staff table as well as for the instructor. Last but not certainly least, this is a training session. It's meant to be an interactive session for you all as the leaders and commission and commissioners. There is no public comment tonight. So if you have any questions for staff and you're here from the public, we're happy to talk to you offline. So I'll turn that over to Tisha then. Doug, I'm sorry, did you have a question?
Do questions need to be seconded?
So the question is, do questions need to be seconded? You know, that's a great lead-in for our instructor. So,
no, the answer is no. A request for information is what that is called in parliamentary terms, and it doesn't require a second. So hi, everybody. Thanks for being here tonight. I feel like it is really unfair that I am training the night after the Seahawks won the Super Bowl. Like, how can I possibly top that excitement from last night? But hopefully you're still all happy, feeling good. So my name is Tisha Gieser. I'm a registered parliamentarian and a trainer with Jurassic Parliament, which is a local company that focuses on parliamentary training. I think we're really lucky to have them in our region. I have been working in the public sector my whole career. So I worked for the Alaska State Legislature up in Juneau for 10 years, where I worked on the House floor and supported the House of Representatives. And I really... I was perplexed and excited by the parliamentary procedure that I saw unfold there. There's a lot of rules, but the rules have to be flexible because the ultimate goal is that policy gets made. And so I was kind of compelled by that and really enjoyed my time there. And now I work for the city clerk in Issaquah. I've been there for 10 years. And on the side, I do training in local communities like this. And I really enjoy it because, let's get to the why of the training. Let's see if I can, there we go. So the purpose of this training is to help invigorate you to run effective meetings in the service of your community. I'm sure that's why you're all here spending your free time helping Sumner be a better place. And the reason I'm so passionate about this training is because I've seen over my time working for elected and appointed officials how challenging your roles are. So you often have mandates coming at you from the federal, state, county level. You have limited budgetary resources. You are making decisions where you can't really make everyone happy. So your community members and constituents have different ideas of what the best approach is. And you're making all of these decisions in the wide open, on camera. You know, it's vulnerable, it's challenging. And so what we're going to talk about tonight is, I'm not going to talk to you about how to make good policy, but I am going to talk to you about kind of the scaffolding by which you're making your decisions up here. So, I'm going to be giving you a process. We're going to be going over a process that you can use when you have really hard decisions. And it's not necessarily going to make the decision easier, but it's going to ensure there's this consistent, repeatable process by which all of your decisions, the easy ones and the hard ones, will go through. And I think that helps a bit. Also, we're aiming for civility at your meetings, and we're also aiming for a safe space where you all can safely share your viewpoints and then figure out what the group is going to move forward. So these are the specific things that outcomes we're looking for tonight. So the first is applying the principle, the authority of the group is more important than any single individual. We're going to talk about best practices for discussion, responding to disorder and difficult people, making motions, and running effective public comment. And again, I believe that all of this together is going to help you make better decisions. And I do want to reiterate what Jason said. I want this to be interactive, so please, questions. Staff, if you have something to add that I didn't get quite right or you'd like to augment, please let me know, okay? All right. So this is the order we're going to go in, the chronology. We're going to start a little theoretical with authority and roles, and then we're going to move into the logistics of your meetings, opening them, making motions, discussion, or it can be called debate and public comment. And then we'll wrap up at 8 o'clock, and we'll take a break about 7:10, 7:15. All right, this is the disclaimer that I'm not an attorney. Being a parliamentarian is not the same thing. I understand here your parliamentarian is also an attorney, which is awesome. So nothing in this training should be construed as legal advice. And it's really good to consult with your attorney on some matters, and I'll be mentioning a few during the training tonight. All right, so has anyone taken a training from Jurassic Parliament? Oh, a few. Okay, awesome. I'm still getting the hang of the dinosaurs, so don't be too critical of me. The woman pictured in the center here is Anne McFarland. She's the founder of Jurassic Parliament. She was the chair of a nonprofit board, and she was trying to figure out how to convey to the members some of these parliamentary procedures she was getting herself trained up on as the chair. And she thought she needed to make it a little more interesting and complex by bringing in dinosaurs. And so we're going to use the dinosaurs tonight because we're to do some practicing. So you have a script that I'm going to have you break into groups in a little bit here just to get some practice saying these things because it's really helpful. And we're going to be in a fictitious land when we do this. We're going to have some fun with it. So we're in the maps in front of you are maps of the League of Northwest Dino Cities. And specifically, we're going to be the city council in the city of Dinopolis. Anne had fun developing this region, which looks suspiciously like the Puget Sound. And the motto of the City Council of the City of Dinopolis is we do our best for all our residents, whether we like them or not. And I'd like you to repeat that with me. Let's get into it here a little bit, okay? We do our best for all our residents, whether we like them or not. Okay. Sorry, hopefully that's not offensive to our public who's here, but we're going to have a little fun with this. Okay. So let's talk a little theoretical for a few minutes about roles. This is important. It kind of sets the basis for the rest of the training. So what's parliamentary procedure? Let's talk about that for a minute. Basically rules related to your meetings and roles in your meetings, like the role of the chair. The parliamentary procedure is really about efficiency and settling disputes in the meeting. So those are two of the things that Robert's Rules does really well, and you'll hear that as a theme throughout. So Robert's Rules of Order is the premier, the most widely used book of parliamentary procedure in the world. It was drafted in the late 19th century by an Army general and engineer, an Army engineer named Henry M. Robert, and he was a civically engaged fellow living in San Francisco, and he was frustrated that these different groups that he was a part of were spending a lot of time, wasting a lot of time trying to figure out how to do things, how to move through their business. And when he went looking around for a guide, all he could find were things like at the federal level or the state level for the legislature, which weren't a good fit for these community organizations. And so he wrote a pocket guide at that time to provide a sort of common understanding and agreed to rules. And it's still, pervasive today. So the Roberts family still has the rights to the book, and which is, I know, kind of amazing. It's on its 12th edition. It has grown. This would not fit in my pocket remotely. It's over 630 pages. But there are some great kind of consolidated versions if you're interested in learning more after the training today. There's Robert's Rules in Brief, which is pictured there, which I think I saw Andrea's got, which covers a lot of common situations. And then Jurassic Parliament has a book that is nice because it's specific to local government. Robert's Rules applies to all kinds of organizations. It's used at political party conventions, the Boy Scouts of America board. So when you read it, a lot of it doesn't quite fit with local government, and Jurassic Parliament has kind of tailored the elements that do, which is nice. And I will be doing that tonight during the training. Both your Planning Commission and your City Council have adopted Robert's Rules as your parliamentary authority, which is great. So I want to talk to you about where it fits in, and this might feel a little intuitive here, but I think it's worth spending a minute on. So as government agencies, we got a lot of rules we've got to follow. It's a lot. Starting with the U.S. Constitution and federal law, and we'll talk a little bit under public comment about how First Amendment rights play a role in your public comment period. But anything in the Constitution, federal, state, or local law is going to supersede Robert's Rules. In Washington state, we have a number of provisions related to your meetings that are in state law in the Open Public Meetings Act, and then the council has a number of voting thresholds, things like public hearings that are required. Those are going to supersede Robert's Rules. Next comes your charter articles of incorporation, which are more pertain to a nonprofit, or your city code, which your code, it looks like, has a little bit to say about the planning commission. And then you have your adopted rules, the bylaws or council rules listed there. Both bodies have adopted rules, which are in your power to amend. And again, anything in those are going to supersede Robert's rules. And both of your sets of rules are different, and both of your sets of rules do have things that are different from Robert's rules, and I'll try and call those out. And then where all of those laws and rules are silent, that's where Robert's rules fits in. And scenarios not covered there. So during the training tonight or sometime when you're conducting your meetings, you might be made aware that something you're doing isn't quite it's not the way Robert's rules does it. It's the way you do it and you like to do it. That's fine, but if someone challenges that, you've got to default to the written rule. So that's why it's great to incorporate things that your body likes to do and likes to do differently in your adopted rules. So you just have that standing for them. All right, that was kind of a lot, but again, let me know if you have any questions. Okay, let's talk a bit about rules. We're again going to start high level and then we'll drill down. So this is, again, probably pretty intuitive, but I just want to spend a minute talking about it because we have two really different groups in the room, right? Actually, council members, you have your nice name tags, which is really helpful. Planning commissioners, can you raise a hand here? Which this is reminding me that I totally flew by. We were going to do an introduction. I wonder if now would still be okay to take a minute and do that. Sorry, I just got going. And so they have mics here. And then, okay, let's take a minute before we talk about roles and do a round the room introduction. Can we start with you, Councilmember Evers, and down and around?
Mark Evers, City Council for about 40 days.
Very good.
Nicole Wilsey, City Council since December. I didn't count the days.
Michael Hochstetter, City Council.
Matthew Kenna, City Council.
Greg Reinke, City Council, 2 years.
Sure. Jason Wilson, City Administrator.
Andrea Marquez, City.
Andrea Marquez, City Attorney.
Krishanda Walker, Associate Planner.
Maria Pariseau, Deputy City Clerk.
Doug Ruth, Deputy City Attorney.
Michelle Converse, City Clerk.
Ryan Windish, City Community and Economic Development Director.
Mark Malcolm, Planning Commission.
Sharon Fochman, Planning Commission.
Andy Elfers, Deputy Mayor.
Carla Bowman, Mayor. 40 days. I counted. You were right.
All right, anyone? We have someone in the back here. You don't have to. Hi. Anyone? And we might have someone online with us, I understand? Possibly? Okay. One more planning commissioner. Okay. Welcome. Okay. Thank you for doing that. All right. So we have a few planning commissioners, number of city council members and staff. We'll talk about all roles. So city councils are your governing body, right? So you're the lucky ones who get to make decisions and decide policy for the entire city, which is a lot. And you're taking final action on behalf of the city. Your advisory bodies, and it looks like you have a handful of them here, they are valuable to you because they are taking the deep dive into specific policy areas. And so for our planning commissioners, they're looking closely at that land use policy. I do not envy that. And your zoning code and making recommendations. And as part of that, they are hearing from the public, maybe taking some public hearings and then giving you their best recommendation, which really helps you do your job more efficiently. But I do want to acknowledge that for our advisory bodies that you do have a bit of a challenging role because you are getting your work kind of funneled to you from the mayor's work plan and the city council's budget setting, and you're kind of being said, okay, here, give us input on this. And I know in the city I work for, that can feel a little limiting sometimes to the advisory bodies. And I know sometimes in doing their work, they come across areas where they would like to spend more time looking at things. So sometimes they will, at a meeting, make a motion to provide a recommendation to the mayor because there's something they want to look into further and would like to see it on a future agenda. So just wanted to acknowledge that. And then I'm going to be talking about both of your bodies today just as bodies, or the body. That's what we're going to be saying, but might touch on those differences there. There's another important difference here. This slide isn't organized as well as I would like, but what it's trying to say is that you all, both of you, both bodies are debating, you're considering policy, ideas, strategy to make the city a better place. And that is an important role, and it's also important that you stay at that level of input and decision making and leave those details to the mayor and city staff. And so what does that mean practically? What that means practically is if you have questions for staff, send them to the department director, let the city administrator know, copy him so that everyone's aware what you're reaching out on and can get you the help that you need. Also, it's important to actually observe that it's in state law that, you are not individually to be directing staff. So how you are going to provide that direction is at your meetings. And we're going to talk about how to do that and the value and importance of that. But just being aware of that when you are interacting with staff. And then the last bullet point here is a suggestion that when you're interacting with the community, it might not be every communication that you need to copy city staff on, but certainly there may be some where it is valuable to loop them in and possibly have them attend a meeting with you if you're meeting with someone in the community who wants to talk to you about a particular issue. I think something I've seen happen sometimes at the agency I work for is someone is kind of shopping for some answers or some sympathetic perspectives, which is just fine, but it's also really important that we're all working from the same information, right? And not committing to something that can't be followed through on. So just remembering that staff are a resource. They want to help. They want to help get things done. They want to help people out. But again, that need to be brought in at a time where they can actually best assist before things get too far. Anything to add over here? Okay, awesome. All right, so that was a real quick touch on some more agency-wide roles, and now we're going to talk about roles in your meetings. So the chair, is our Planning Commission chair here tonight by chance? He's not. Okay. And then Mayor, you chair the city council meetings. Does the council have any other committees or anything like that that are chaired by a council member? Yes. All right. So is any council members, any of you chairing currently? A couple of you. Okay. Okay. Awesome. All right. So this applies to current chairs and anyone who might be a future chair. So one of the things Jurassic Parliament has seen is there's a lot of misunderstanding around this role. And so a fundamental guideline is during meetings, the chair is the servant of the group and the group is the final authority. So we need to think of it, well, let me move to the next slide. In our society, we typically think of the chair or the decision as a decision maker, as someone at the top of a pyramid. So we're used to, the CEO of a corporation, the principal of a school. The person at the top has more power in decision making, or maybe they unilaterally make decisions. That is really different than how both of your bodies are going to function. So you each get one vote. It doesn't matter if you've been on the council 10 years or a month, you get one vote. And chairs, it depends. Generally, you also are voting, with the exception of the mayor, who votes in case of a tie on certain issues. But the rest of you chairing your committee meetings or the planning commission chair, they get to vote, but their vote doesn't count for any more than anyone else's. Really, they're facilitating the group getting to a decision. And so just wanting to stop and think about that, and we're going to talk a little bit more what that can look like practically. So what does the chair need? They need to know that they're supporting a deliberative body, so they don't get to speak louder, vote twice, misuse their authority. They also need a majority of the body in favor of civility, which the fact that you've shown up here tonight makes me believe that you are in favor of that, so that is wonderful. And they also need some energy and moxie to kind of pull it all together. And I will say, and anyone who's chaired hopefully agrees with this, chairing is a lot of work. can be a lot of work. Depending on what kind of conversation you're navigating, it can require a lot of focus. So that's also why I think it's good as members that you have some training, because you can help the chair. The chair might miss something as they're trying to kind of pay attention to the public and pay attention to what they have to facilitate next. They might miss something, and you can help them out by, we'll talk about raising a point of order. So these are some things specifically in the meeting that the chair does. They should be recognizing anyone to speak. If you aren't recognized by the chair, you shouldn't be talking unless you, there's just a few exceptions to that. The chair should be facilitating the discussion and be empowered to interrupt a member who breaks the rules. The chair should be fair, remain calm, and they're helping to manage time. Their goal is to get the group through the agenda. So this means that the chair needs to be comfortable kind of holding some boundaries in place, right? So if someone, and this could be accidental, if someone they have something they want to say and they just start blurting it out, the chair should really respectfully and kindly stop them. Interruptions are really not a thing in Robert's Rules. There's, again, a few exceptions, but in general, someone shouldn't be interrupted when they're making their remarks. And the chair should be willing to cut them off, all right? And the chair should not be doing these things. And this is all about, in Robert's Rules, the chair is the neutral facilitator. And so and I'll talk to you in just a minute about what this can look like in larger groups, but in smaller groups, generally your chair is voting, but they shouldn't be participating too much in discussion. They shouldn't be the one talking the most at the meetings. They shouldn't be trying to control the content. They're trying to facilitate. They shouldn't be overly persuasive, certainly can still try and be persuasive. They shouldn't be getting emotional or interrupting because they have, maybe more information or want to correct someone. So they shouldn't be misusing that authority. Go ahead.
Yeah, in particular, the role of the mayor, it sounds like the chairs, still have voting capability, discussion, and those types of things. But in terms of the mayor, my understanding is they are allowed to participate in discussion, offer their perspective, like you're saying, not take over the agenda item or the discussion too much. But is it also appropriate for council members to ask, for the mayor's perspective on something and to try to follow the rules that way? I don't know if you can offer any more guidance than you have on that.
Yeah, no, I think what you said, absolutely. They can speak. They can speak at the meeting. They can share the administration's viewpoints. They can respond to questions. It just shouldn't be, they shouldn't be doing a bunch of sort of lobbying for their position on the dais. I mean, not that there can't be some of that. There should be some restraint. There's a balance. There's a balance there, but certainly information has to be shared and context. So the mayor might have some context that's really helpful for you to know. So it doesn't mean they can't talk.
Can you? So if I'm a chair of a committee and I report at a meeting, as the chair, saying that the 3 members of this committee recommended a do pass recommendation for this thing. Now that says do not try to make people vote your way, but that's kind of what we're doing, right?
It is kind of what you're doing. I think what it's meaning is not, so as the chair, you recognize members to speak, and maybe you choose to have a little more informality at the committee meeting, but ideally, even with the 3-person committee, you would call on the members. So let's say every time you called on a member, they spoke, you took a turn to speak, to push your agenda after each speaker. That, I think, would be a bit of misuse of the mic. Okay, so it would be better, and actually, right here is Jurassic Parliament recommends that you speak last, so give the others a turn to speak, then share your viewpoint on the issue. Also in voting, vote last. And this was something when I worked for the legislature, they took to a different level, which I'm not suggesting you do at your committees. There was a 40-member body, and the Speaker of the House didn't speak at all in this case. Larger body, different rules, actually. They follow different rules. But in his case, I only saw him do it once, but he wanted to speak on something he really cared about. He called someone up and gave them the gavel and went and walked down and sat where the rest of the members were, and he stayed there. He spoke very passionately, and he stayed there through the vote, right? Because it could have been perceived, everyone then knew how he felt, and so maybe they couldn't trust him to be fair and impartial as the chair. So again, you don't need to do that. You can share your viewpoints, but just suggesting a little bit of restraint. All right, good questions. This is what we don't want to happen. I believe this actually, this was a photo taken in Black Diamond. I think this did actually happen, sadly. And I'm not sure which, I'm assuming the woman sitting was the chair, and we don't want this. This is what we don't want. Robert's rule says the chair should never get excited. They're calm, steady presence. Okay. There's a cheat sheet that I'll give. I have a couple that I'll hand out, but Jurassic Parliament has a couple great cheat sheets that are available on their website. I think you have one in your handout, and it has some language that can be helpful pertaining to things we're covering today. Okay, I'm going to keep clipping along here. So, role of members. You have an important role. One of them is to show up. And so, just wanting to reiterate, if you can't attend a meeting, please let staff know. We'll talk about a quorum in just a minute. You can't have a meeting without a quorum of members. So if you can't make a meeting, please tell someone. We're going to be talking about efficient meetings. Efficient meetings are good. You get things done and you're not here for 4 hours. So one of the best ways that you can have an efficient meeting is by preparing. That's reading your agenda packets. And the third bullet here is kind of like I feel like it's like extra credit. So if you have questions and amendments, so when you're reading through your packet, you have some questions. If you can, send those questions to staff. What's really unfortunate is when there's some big questions, maybe staff aren't aware of them in advance, which is fine. You can still ask questions off the cuff, but maybe they don't have the answers. And then maybe the group isn't comfortable moving forward because they really feel like they need this answer. And so then you're not, you haven't used that meeting time as well as if maybe on Sunday you send a note saying, these are my questions. So just a suggestion, I think the same of an amendment. So you're reading through something, you're like, I don't agree. I'd like to propose a change to this. Let staff know. They can help you with the wording because sometimes it's hard to know what exactly the wording should be. I know at the city council I support, they also like if then the clerk distributes proposed amendments to the council members in advance of the meeting. The council members like this because I think that they feel more comfortable knowing in advance of something they'll be asked to vote on. So it gives them a few minutes to sort of gather their thoughts. So again, these aren't requirements, but I think having a no surprise rule and doing your best to communicate changes or questions is really helpful and helps an efficient meeting. Yes.
Should you send the question to the entire, planning commission so the answer goes to everyone or just to?
Well, maybe we'll have the planning director. What is your practice or what's your preference?
We would prefer individual questions to go to staff.
So this is Ryan Windisch, Community Development Director. We would prefer that if a planning commissioner has a question or council has a question on something that we're putting on your agenda, that it come to, it not go to the whole, the answer doesn't go to the whole. I guess staff might be able to send it out to the whole, but what we're really trying to avoid there is any open public meetings violation where you have, it's too easy to get into a conversation that's reply all. So if you have a question, send it to staff. Staff can be ready to answer that question before the meeting even. So I think that covers it. Thanks.
Yeah. And then you could certainly share out that answer at the meeting or staff could as well so that everyone could benefit from it. All right. So a few more points here on individual, on members' role. So what's your authority in these deliberative bodies? This is a trick question. It's 0. This is kind of something to get accustomed to, but really in the groups that you're a part of, it's really about what a majority of you decide, which means this. Your effectiveness is going to depend on your ability to persuade a majority of the members present voting to support your position. So I think this is kind of a powerful thing to sit with for a minute. Your viewpoints matter, but really it is about what is the group going to move forward. So you all have an equal right to persuade others towards your viewpoint. You should have robust discussion. That's part of what this is, right? Working through hard issues. So express your views freely and don't hold back. None of this is about holding back. We want you to give your viewpoints, but we want to do it in a somewhat controlled environment. But at the end of the day, you need to accept what the majority decided, unless there's a higher vote threshold, but the default vote threshold is a majority. of those present. I saw a powerful example of this when I worked for the legislature. They had some really intense policy discussions, and the majority leader and the minority leader sat next to each other, just like the two of you. And I remember one particular day, there was a lot of heated discussion from both sides of the issue, really impassioned. And the meeting was adjourned, and I was sitting there kind of just absorbing what had just happened. And I noticed the majority leader and minority leader get up and walk in the middle of the aisle, and shake hands and ask about each other's families. And it kind of makes me emotional to think about, because they were very opposed on this issue, strongly opposed. Both made very eloquent, impassioned remarks. The minority lost, but that didn't stop them from shaking it off. The minute the meeting was over, I was quite impressed about how quickly, I think I would have needed a few minutes to get there, but and just showed respect as colleagues, right? So really powerful. Robert's rule says that it's not appropriate to talk negatively of past action the group has taken. There's actually a rule around this. You got to get comfortable accepting what a majority of your colleagues decide. All right, last rule we're going to cover real quick, staff. So staff are not members, so they need to be acknowledged by the chair to speak, but their participation is crucial to you as decision makers. And so they do need to be able to talk in order to fulfill their function of service. So their responsibility is to remind you of the laws, regulations, and fiscal constraints that apply. So though they technically need your acknowledgement to participate in the meetings, you really want to create an environment where staff are empowered to speak up. If a member has an idea and other members are gelling around it, but there's a significant issue with it actually happening that staff know about, you need them to feel safe to tell you so you don't go down a bad path. So critical role that staff provide at your meetings. And this probably doesn't need to be said, but just for the sake of it, you also have a responsibility to be courteous to staff. And if you should not be criticizing them at your meetings. Not that you couldn't criticize an approach or a viewpoint, that would be fine, but certainly not their performance or them personally. That would be something you would want to do in a private conversation with the city administrator. So a public meeting is not the place for that. And again, probably just stating the obvious there, but want to cover that. So this slide, I think, this concept is important. So you're responsible to give clarity to staff. So what doesn't work well is floating an idea and then expecting staff to move it forward. If you want to direct staff, there should be a motion and a vote to determine if a majority of your colleagues agree. If you're unsure if staff have what they need from you, ask them. And I want to talk about a couple ways that you can do this as chairs in particular. And I actually think at committees, this can be a common situation. So you have one member who has an idea that they state. I'm going to make something up. I want to have a joint meeting with the city of Bonnie Lake to get resolution here. And no one else says anything. Like maybe the next speaker goes on to a different topic, or so chair. So the question always is, well, was that direction or not? So as chair, you can do a couple things. You can say, do any other members have a perspective on that idea? Or you can say, member, would you like to make a motion to provide that direction, which allows the members to vote? If you think it's something that everyone's supportive, maybe they're nodding, or you could say, is there any objection to directing staff to schedule a joint meeting with the city of Bonnie Lake? Pause. All right, hearing no objection, staff, we would like to proceed to have a joint meeting with the city of Bonnie Lake scheduled. So those are a couple avenues you can take. The idea here is just, does a majority support that? I have seen I've been in a lot of meetings where there's a meeting and a presentation and talking, and the meeting ends and staff don't know what they're supposed to do next, which just feels really unfortunate, right? Everyone just gave a lot of their time to this issue. And so it's so crucial, which again, why that last point is there. At a minimum, check with them. The chair can do that. And if you're sitting there as a member and you're like, I'm not quite sure what the next steps are, say something, right? It'll help everyone to be clear on those next steps. Yes, we like that. We like clear direction. All right. Any questions on that before we move into some? Okay, I'm going to have a real short 5-minute section here, and then we're going to do a little practicing. So we just talked a little theoretical. Now we're going to talk about starting your meeting. It's what time do your meetings start? Is it 7?
6 p.m.
6. Okay. Planning Commission 2? Okay. 6. Okay. So it's 5:59. What do you need? You need a quorum. A quorum is the minimum number of voting members who must be present for business to be done. If you lose your quorum, you can't do business. It's an important number. Anyone know what your quorum is? It's the same for both groups. Four. It's 4. Need 4 of you here. Is your attendance pretty good generally at your meetings? Yeah? Okay, good. All right. So then the chair is going to wrap the gavel and say this meeting of the City Council of the City of Dinopolis is called to order. They're going to maybe ask staff to take a roll and handle excused absences, announcing those. Maybe a motion is made to excuse folks. Yes. Okay. Then that's going to happen at the beginning of the meeting. And then you're going to move through your meeting agenda. But I did want to take just a moment to say your quorum is one thing, and then your voting requirement is a different thing. Let's just talk about that for just a moment. So a default vote requirement is a majority of those present and voting. So if you have a quorum of 4, what's that going to be? How many votes do you need to pass something? 3. Yes. That's a big difference. Well, it's not, I guess, such a big difference if there are 7 of you and 4. But it can be squishy if someone has a conflict of interest, because then that brings your voting number down to 3, which is a problem. So this is why we want to know about your attendance, and I'll be talking to you in a little bit later about conflict of interest. We want to know about those too, because it kind of helps determine what those voting thresholds are. Yes.
I guess I had a question maybe for Andrea or Jason. I'm so sorry, I'm just learning this right now, how to act as a councilman. But I'm just curious. I think during our orientation, it said that if we were out of the state or out of town, we could be at a meeting via like Zoom or online. Do we still have the voting and able to vote and everything?
Yeah, according to your rules, remote attendance gives you all the same rights and privileges as attending here in person, so you would be able to vote.
Thank you.
Great, that's a great option. All right, Robert's rule says, so now your meeting has started, you're following your agenda. Your agenda is your guide for the meeting. Robert's rule says if you have a standard order of business, which both of your bodies do, you don't have to adopt an agenda. You can amend an agenda. That should be happening at the beginning of your meeting if there's a change, and that requires a majority vote. I do think having estimated times for agenda items is a helpful tool. I think it can help the chair a bit with managing time, but it's important if times are added, they're noted as approximate. So you're not pigeonholed into those exact times. So you're going to follow your agenda, you're going to get everything done, and then I wanted to quickly touch on the end of the meeting, and then we'll go back to the middle. So once say you get through all your agenda items, the chair, there doesn't need to be a motion to adjourn. The chair can just say, there being no further business, the meeting is adjourned, gavel, done. If you're in the middle of an agenda item and it's getting late, someone can make a motion to adjourn before your items are complete. And if that happens, there's lots of variations on this in Robert's rules, but a simple motion to adjourn would just stop the meeting kind of exactly where you're at, and the items would carry over to your next regular meeting. There are lots of different things you can do, like schedule special meetings or continue a meeting, but if the meeting's late and you just need to put a stop to it, or someone wants to put a stop to it, you can make that motion. All right, we're going to take about 15 minutes, and I need you in groups of 6. So I'll need you to do a little chair dragging here, and we'll turn the microphones off for this portion. And I'm going to have you just read through a script. Now, a quick comment here. I just talked to you about how typically in a body you need to be recognized by the chair to speak. In the script, you're not going to do that. Just when you see the role that you've picked for yourself there, you're just going to read it. Okay? So it probably will take about 10, 15 minutes. Find 5 other people to gather up. All right, you guys, I need a bigger gavel. We're going to call back to order. Some great acting was happening during this exercise. I felt like you guys were really getting into it. Is there any observations or questions that came up? There was a lot covered in that script. A lot of funniness.
A lot of different scenarios, definitely.
Yeah.
I had a question. So a motion can be amended more than once then? Is that what?
It can.
Okay. Which gets, when you amend motions, it gets pretty confusing anyway, and now you can amend it more than once? Okay.
Yes. Yes. Those are both true statements. Yes.
So in that, to that question, is it the chair or the mayor's responsibility to keep track of those amendments and keep the group in the same direction in terms of, okay, we have multiple amendments, or we have an amendment on an amendment, and like how we vote in what order and we process all those? Is that their responsibility?
Yeah, and your clerk and parliamentarian can assist with that. If there's multiple amendments, it can be really helpful to number them, kind of go through them one at a time. But yeah, you likely will want a little support from staff to keep everyone clear. I know I've also, pulled amendments up on screen if they're being amended to and we're just a great segue because we're just going to talk about the 8 steps to make a motion. And there are 8 steps for a reason, and it's to make sure everyone is clear what's being voted on every time. So, yes.
Is it, can we address a point of order to staff in those meetings, like for clarification on the amendment process or anything?
You could raise a point of order. Technically, the chair is always the one who's supposed to rule on those, but they could ask staff to answer. And that could happen live, or that could happen, we'll talk about at a brief at ease, which is like a pause in the meeting where everyone stays seated, but the mics are off if the chair needs to do a quick consultation. But also the chair could just say, staff, can you assist? Are you prepared to help us get on track? Which amendment are we on? Amendments can get confusing, but they're also really important because not everything that comes before you is perfect. So sometimes changes need to be made, and it just requires some patience and good documentation. Yes. Okay. So let's talk about motions. So a motion is and then we're going to take a break, a 5-minute break. A motion is a formal proposal by a member in a meeting that the body takes certain action. That's what a motion is. And this is where the dinosaurs come in. In Jurassic Parliament, the main motion is represented by the Tyrannosaurus Rex because only one main motion can be offered at a time. And a main motion are your agenda items: approving a contract, recommending adoption of a change to your land use code. Those are main motions. And this is a sort of typical flow, even though I did observe that I know at least at the council level, you're doing this in a slightly different order, which is fine. A typical flow might be that staff presents the main motion sort of topic, gives you information. Members ask a question or two. The motion is moved and seconded. That should really happen before debating, or there can be a little bit of discussion, but the motion should be made and seconded pretty quickly before the group starts debating. Then members discuss the motion and may amend it, and then members vote on the motion. So council, I see you make your motion kind of at the very beginning, and then I also see that you have public comment in here, which is after the staff presentation, I believe that happens. Yep. Planning Commission, when are you typically making your motions? Before staff present, after staff present? After? Okay. Yeah, so it's okay. This is not a required order, but just to think about the flow. So a couple attributes that are important for main motions, I would say actually really any motion. They should be in writing if possible. I'm guessing your agenda packets include proposed motions typically. Is that typical? Yes. Okay, so that's really helpful. So those are in writing. But you may have an amendment or a change to the motion, and that's also helpful to have in writing. If you get this idea when the meeting is happening and you need a minute to write something down, request a brief break in the meeting where you can jot something down. It is hard when something isn't in writing because the chair has to restate the motion. That's hard for them to do if they don't have it written in front of them. It's hard for the clerk to get the accurate wording of the motion into the minutes. The wording of the motion should be clear and unambiguous. So the so moved thing is not something that that's challenging. It's better to have a clear statement. It should be phrased in the grammatical positive. So you wouldn't make a motion to not approve a contract. You'd have a motion to approve a contract and then vote against it. And then it has to comply with the laws of the land and only, again, one main motion at a time. So I'm going to give you just a second to read this statement on the screen. All right, is there a motion in there? Maybe it's a viewpoint. And, there might be times where you have a viewpoint and you're not sure if you have support for that viewpoint and you're not sure you want to use the political capital to make a motion or an amendment. So maybe you just want to be on the record as saying what you think. That's okay. You don't have to turn everything into a motion. But if you want to see where your colleagues are at and maybe move something forward, then you do need to come up with a motion. And let's look at what that sounds like in just one moment. One more slide. So these are the 8 steps to process a motion. So a member makes one, another member seconds it, the chair restates it, then you get to the discussion and amending. Then when that's done, the chair restates the motion one more time, and then the vote is taken, step 6. Step 7, the chair announces the outcome, and step 8, the chair states the next item of business. This can feel kind of long. If you read this, the chair is saying the motion is said 3 times. Once by the member making it, second by the chair before they open debate, and then third before the vote. This is exactly to your earlier point. What are we voting on? Let's be really clear what we are voting on. If you're ever unclear on that, you should, it wouldn't really be a point of order. It'd be a point of information or a parliamentary inquiry. And you don't even have to be exact with your words, but just ask for clarification. If you're unsure, someone else is too. All right, so we're going to just quickly, you just did this with the script, but I'm going to quickly talk through this. So the general contractor makes a motion. I move that residents be authorized to build patios in their private yards. Second, if there's no second, the motion dies. The chair can just say that. It's really awkward when that happens. That happens sometimes. Again, you're in hard positions. Sometimes you have an idea, you're putting it out there, and maybe someone doesn't want to discuss it. When you're seconding something, you're not saying you're going to vote for it. You're just saying you think it's worth listening. It's worth hearing more. Yeah. All right. Okay. Now the chair is going to restate the motion. It has been moved and seconded that residents be authorized to build patios in their private yards. Is there any discussion? The first person who gets to speak is the maker of the motion. They don't have to speak, but they get the first right of refusal. And after that, it's kind of first come, first serve. You can't, according to Robert's rules, you can't speak against your own motion, but you can vote against it. I think that's strange. I'm sure there's some rationale behind that. It hasn't been shared with me yet, so I'm unsure. But okay, so the general contractor says, catios are a safe and effective way to protect cats from predators and birds from cats. Here's an example of a nice little catio. I urge my colleagues to vote in favor of this motion. It's actually pretty attractive, I think. The photographer says, I'm in favor. My cousin has built a catio and her little pet Fuzzy is completely at home in it, as you can see from this photo. Very sweet. Okay, architect. I think this is a terrible idea. Catios are intrusive and will ruin the look of our city. Here's an example I saw when I visited Dino Dome last week. We don't want this kind of ugly building in beautiful Dinopolis. So bad. Okay, so ugly. And then the chairs, so there's been some debate and the chair's going to say, is there any further discussion or are you ready to vote? If no one responds, then the chair is going to move to take the vote. Are you typically taking your votes by roll call vote or voice vote? Roll call? Roll call. Okay. Yes.
Question about the discussion. So is the chair then managing the discussion? Like, you spoke, and you spoke twice, and you can't, is it like that it's supposed to be? Okay.
Yeah, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that after the break. Yes, and I'm interested to hear how that's working in your groups. Yes. They are absolutely facilitating. And in fact, if you've been to like a legislative body, they'll say through the chair. Have you heard that? When people are testifying in Olympia, when they're speaking to like a legislative committee, they'll say through the chair, Senator so-and-so. And they're taking that really literally, which is that really the chair is, everything goes through them. From you to them, they acknowledge you, you speak. So absolutely. Okay, so then if it's a voice vote, the chair says, all those in favor say aye. Roll call staff, I imagine, are the ones reading the names. Does the clerk do that? Yeah, and you're responding with your vote. In the Planning Commission, how do you typically vote? Are your names called? Yes, roll call vote. Okay, great. A note here, no discussion during voting. You shouldn't qualify your vote. So when your name is called, it's not really appropriate for you to say anything other than, aye or no, or maybe you say yes or no. You can say a strong yes, I suppose, but no other words. That's just what you get to say. Aye or no, yes or no. Nothing should interrupt the voting process. It's kind of a sanctimonious time. I feel like the vote is always exciting. We're finally to that point. So nothing should happen. Even if you think a rule's been broken, it all has to wait till after that vote's over. All right, and then the chair is going to announce the outcome of the vote. The wording is on the screen here. A note that the chair, if you're not doing roll call votes, this isn't so important, but so if you're doing a roll call or a voice vote where you're saying all those in favor, all those opposed, you always have to call for that negative vote, even if it seems unanimous. That's something Robert's Rules specifies. And then the chair is going to move the meeting along. All right, this 8 steps, this is the process used for a main motion. It's also the process used for an amendment or an amendment to an amendment or a motion to refer something to committee or to postpone it to another meeting. You use those 8 steps for any motion. And so just like the traffic lights here, we all know what that means. We don't even have to think of it. We want you in your meetings to just get used to these 8 steps of processing motions. There are a few shortcuts we'll talk about. Abstaining. Under Robert's Rules, to abstain is to do nothing, and it's basically like the absence of a vote. I do see in Sumner that abstentions are not allowed. Really for either of your bodies, definitely for the City Council. The Planning Commission rules also seem to infer that wasn't an option, unless you have a conflict of interest, which we'll talk about. So this is just good for you to know. If you're here, you are voting, unless you have a conflict of interest. Those are established in state law, and you might have something in your city code or ethics policy about them as well. The really important thing, if you think you have a conflict, so you have a financial interest or personal interest in something that's coming before the council or the planning commission, reach out to staff. It impacts the quorum, it impacts the voting requirements, and you need to know how to handle it in the meeting. So please send them a note. And if you're unsure, they'll let you know if it's a real conflict, if it's a perceived conflict. And if you do have a conflict of interest, then you are excused from voting. It's called a recusal, and you likely will be coming off the dais and possibly leaving the room. All right. Fast track. Unanimous consent. I mentioned this earlier. This is good for chairs to know. It's very efficient, and it's an efficient way to deal with very minor amendments. It's basically a vote it's not really a vote. It's there's no discussion. It's the chair facilitating something quickly to get to an outcome. Let's look at what it sounds like here. So it's great to use for the minutes. The chair can say, is there any objection to approval of the minutes? Pause. If there's no objection, the chair says, hearing none, the minutes are approved. So it's really quick. So again, for a minor amendment, like maybe some wording maybe there's a word missing or there's a better word, and people seem supportive of that, the chair can say, is there any objection to this amendment? Hearing none, the amendment is approved. If you don't agree, if you want to vote no, if you want to talk about it, if you just want to be on record voting a certain way, then you object, and then you go through the 8 steps. Okay? It works great for things like a recess to something procedural that, may not warrant a full vote. It's a great tool. We're just briefly going to touch on amendments, not going to go, because there's a lot we could talk about, but an amendment is represented by the Dimetrodon in Jurassic Parliament, and an amendment is a change in the motion to make it better. The idea is before you take your final vote, you should get that motion as good as it can be. Or if the motion is adopting an ordinance, you want that ordinance to be as good as it can be. So you will likely have a need for these at times in your work. And they sort of block the main motion. Once an amendment has been moved at step 4, it's in step 4, so discussion and amendments happen at the same time. It prevents further action on the main motion until it is dealt with. So this might sound like, I move that we amend the motion by adding the words, provided that the plan for each catio has been approved by the Design Review Board. And then if adopted, it will read. This can be helpful sometimes if you're like, I need to see it in context. You can ask staff to help with this too if you want something read or potentially shown on screen if they have some time that they can make that happen. So this is, or the chair could also read what it would sound like as amended. The amendment is processed using those same 8 steps. Comment here when you're discussing an amendment, you shouldn't be discussing the whole thing. So when you're discussing, should the design review board be looking at these, you wouldn't say under discussion, I don't like these CADIOs, I'll be voting against the CADIO. We're not talking about the concept in general right now. We're just talking about the amendment to add a review by the design review board. So your comments need to be germane to that. They need to be focused on the amendment. And then you vote on the amendment before you vote on the main motion. If the amendment's adopted, it kind of like hangs out with the main motion as amended. If it's not, it goes away. And other amendments can be brought up. And you can't, again, we're not going to go dive deep into amendments, but you can amend an amendment to 1 degree. Thank goodness, just 1 degree. You can't go beyond that. But you do want to try, if you're addressing a certain area of a motion or an ordinance, you want to try and get that where you want it before you again, vote on the main motion. Okay, I think we're just about at the end of this section. Okay. Yes, we've already talked about this. There is a way you can undo your action. That is possible, but it takes more work. So it's good to take this part slow and get it right the first time. Okay, now we're going to take a 5-minute break. So we'll come back at 7:15 and we'll hit our last 2 sections. Thank you. All right, I found the real gavel. That's pretty good. Yeah, that's pretty good. All right. Okay. You ready? We have 2 more sections to cover, and we'll wrap up. All right. In this next one, we're going to talk about meeting discussion. That's where you spend a lot of your time, right? And then we're going to talk about a point of order and appealing, which is hopefully there's not a lot of that happening in your meetings, but it's good to know it's available. All right. So this is something different to get used to, I think. I know we have the city I work for, we have a lot of advisory boards and so a lot of volunteers. And, I think this part is a little tricky. In these groups, it's not a free form discussion. So there's little formality around it, and that formality is there for a reason. And so we're going to talk a little bit about what that looks like. So in Robert's Rules, discussion isn't a conversation. It has its own rules. And they're not really just best practices. They're actual rules. Many of them are around this principle of equality. All members have equal rights, privileges, and obligations. So this is a big part of why these rules for discussion are here, to make sure everyone has a chance to be heard. The number of members on your council and on your planning commission, those numbers were selected with some intent. Actually, I think in the case of the city council, I think there's something in state law that I think there's less flexibility on that. But your planning commission is established in your code, and there was some decision behind having 7 individuals and 7 viewpoints, right? So a goal is to try and hear from everybody. So we've already talked about one of these things, and I'd like to hear how this is working in your meetings. So you need to be recognized by the chair to speak in discussion. Council, how are you letting the mayor know you have comments? Do you raise your hand? Do you put your mic up? How is that happening now? Recognizing Mike? Oh,
their name shows up.
Oh, yeah. That's cool. Okay. So, and does it keep the order for you?
Yeah, I mean, I can swap it, but yeah.
Oh, that's nice. Okay, that's a great tool. And Planning Commission, are you sitting up here also?
Yes, but I'm not doing that.
You're not doing that?
It's kind of cool when it says the chair recognizes it.
Is it? Okay. Is it kind of a free-for-all?
It's a more robust discussion, yeah.
Okay.
Kind of back and forth. Yeah. They recognize each other constantly.
We're not trying to shame anyone here. No shaming. You just...
It feels like we're just a wee bit more casual than the Robert's Rules allow for.
Yeah. And, there's a balance here because I realize, it's good to work together. The problem, though, is you can end up with someone who all of a sudden wants to dominate your meetings. And if you're not following these, they can. What are you going to do? You haven't been enforcing any protocols, so why would, and it's so much harder to change things. So I do think it's ideal, not that you have to be rigid about this, but it would be good to work towards a little more formality. So things I've seen done, raising your hand, tipping your name tag up, or putting your microphone up. Yes.
The person online, use the microphone, please.
Oh.
The person online has a question.
Yes, please, Amy. Okay. Amy, if you're with us, you're welcome to ask your question. Okay. And if... Oh, okay. And can someone see the chat? Jeff can. Okay. If you see something, Jeff, let us know. Yes.
Yeah, this is all very informative. I'm just thinking some of the stuff seems, I don't know if it's too formal for our committee meetings. Like Michael is the chair of the Community Development Committee, and I don't know if he wants I'm supposed to get his approval before I say anything, or it seems like the committee level at Sumner anyway is a little more informal than this is. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's a valid point. So I have seen I have seen at the committee level, the city I work for, we have committees of 3, and they do this. They don't make it a big deal. They just acknowledge the person. All right, you have something to say. I think the goal here is to prevent back and forth dialogue. We don't want that. We don't want 2 members, even on a 3-person committee, or 2 members of the 7-member planning commission having a back and forth dialogue. That is what we don't want. That is not a good use of anyone's time. You're not hearing from the other 5 people. And so again, you can have some informality in your meetings, but how are you going to prevent that if if you're just totally free flowing? So I think if the chair is comfortable with it being more organic and people are being respectful, it's probably not a huge issue. And especially if the committees are by nature a little less formal. You could play around with it too and see it might not be a big deal for you to get the chair's recognition. So you can make some decisions there. But I definitely think for the 7-member planning commission, I think there'd be value in being a little bit more intentional with the discussion. And let's talk about a few more reasons why. And nothing in the chat. We'll just stay tuned if there's a question online. Oh, sorry. Oh, okay, all good. There we go. So another guideline here, a rule, is no one may speak a second time until everyone who wishes to do so has spoken once. And so I'm thinking this could come up at a committee meeting. There's a staff presentation and one member is asking question after question after question after question, and the other 2 members aren't getting a chance to ask their questions. That's really not okay. The chair should be helping to ensure, okay, you've asked 3 questions. Let's see if the other member, so again, I would recommend to chairs that, you're responsible to help ensure that this equality is happening at the meetings. And this, again, is a rule. So, Mayor, you have it looks like a tool with the microphones where you kind of have a little bit of track here. What you say, chairs, is if someone's wishing to speak, indicating they want to speak a second time, you would say, okay, for those members who haven't spoken, would any of you like to say anything before the council member goes again? So just giving an opportunity. And I think this is also really powerful because some people aren't as vocal as others. Or you might have some members who have these passion issues where they have a lot to say, which again is fine, but we want to try and hear from as many folks as possible. So giving them space to do so. I should mention your planning, well, I'll get into that in just a minute. So I've already kind of talked about this, but dominant people can tend to dominate. This can be well intended or not, but these rules are to try and help protect your meetings from being dominated by 1 or 2 people, and then it helps ensure quality. I think we've pretty much touched on this, so let's move ahead. Another option, and I think this can work at committee meetings or any meeting, I think this works well when there's hesitance to be the first one to speak in discussion, is the chair can do a round robin, basically start calling from folks maybe based on the end of the dais and moving in. And the people called on don't have to say anything, they can pass, but it's just to try and kind of get the discussion going if no one is raising a hand. But the other thing you can do is just first come, first serve, which I call the popcorn style. But regardless, the chair should be recognizing you. There shouldn't be interruptions. In general, there's a few exceptions, but in general, no. And there should not be sidebar conversations. And this can be really distracting for some people. So I think this is important to be aware of. That means that 2 members shouldn't be talking to each other. If you need to say something to someone during the meeting, you can request an at ease, which is the pause in the meeting, or a recess, which is a break in the meeting. And then the next couple bullets there are really about using other devices to communicate in writing during your meeting via text, chat, whatever. Just, again, I probably don't need to say this to you, but there is a perception when people see that happening, they can misconstrue it. I mean, maybe you're communicating with your child at home, but I think it's just be mindful of the fact that people can, make things up, make assumptions. So being aware. And then if you are participating virtually in a meeting, try and keep your camera on. It can create this kind of odd dynamic when you have the people in the room who are visible and then, just like a black screen on screen. It also is tricky to know for a vote and things like that if you're really there. So encourage you to keep your camera on, if at all possible. Yes.
I think we made a council rule that we have to have your cameras on.
Okay.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
That's
okay.
correct.
Okay, I like that. That's good. All right, so these are some rules for discussion. This is what I was going to bring up earlier. So Robert's Rules has some limits. However, these are a little more flexible for groups of 12 or fewer. Robert's Rules has some carve-outs for small groups that are about 12 or fewer. So each member can speak an unlimited number of times on each motion for groups of about 12 or fewer. So there's no limit to the number of rounds of discussion, but each speech should be less than 10 minutes, which probably isn't an issue. 10 minutes is a long time. I'm guessing generally you're not speaking for 10 minutes at once. Your planning commission rules do say that there's 2 rounds of debate on each motion. So if you're not doing that, you might want to consider a change to those at some point, because it's fine until someone kind of brings it up. But the group could decide to extend the rounds. And again, the chair is kind of just facilitating this rounds of voting. Okay, we talked about sort of the logistics of discussion. Let's talk about content, what's not okay. So in general, I want you to be courteous, want you to be respectful. Again, these are probably known things, but let's just put them out there. So these are the inappropriate remarks, and some of these came up in the script. There were some real snarky comments being made in the Pickle Festival script, but what's not okay are personal remarks about other members. If you want to say them about yourself, that's one thing, but about others, not okay. Discourteous remarks or insulting language, inflammatory language, criticizing past actions we talked about, or going off topic. That's also not okay and can be called out as sort of a break in the rules. We want to use people's time well. You need to speak about the main motion that's before the group at that time, and the chair can help with this. Now, these things are all a little subjective, so we'll talk about who decides. Really, the chair is going to kind of decide, but they can ask the group to weigh in, or the chair can make a decision, and that decision can be appealed. So there's some different ways to handle this, but these are all not appropriate in your discussion time. Oh, Jeff, I think I'm stuck again. It's okay. It's okay. Okay. So what happens when things are kind of building at your meetings and there's some behavior that's getting some comments that are getting a little borderline? This is when that point of order comes up. So the point of order is a motion claiming that a procedural mistake has been made. And in Jurassic Parliament, it is represented by the flying dinosaur, the pterodactyl, because it kind of comes in and it has to be addressed right away. So it sort of stops the business. This is one of those motions you could interrupt a speaker if the point of order is related to their comments. So we were just talking about a situation during the break that can happen a lot, which is you're heatedly debating an amendment, and the amendment finally gets passed, and then the chair moves on. Because they're like, amendment's passed, we're going to the next item. Okay, but you need to vote on your amended main motion. That's something you could raise a point of order for. That's not something that you would necessarily interrupt a member who's member's talking and all of a sudden you're like, oh, we didn't vote on that. I need to say something. I would say maybe wait. Maybe wait till they're done. You really want to avoid interrupting people. Unless, again, you feel that their comments are inflammatory, you feel they're really off topic, that's when you would interrupt. You'd get the chair's attention, and the chair would say yes, and you'd say point of order, and the chair, oh, I'm jumping ahead, would say state your point. I'm going to slow down a little bit. We'll get to the script and what it sounds like in just a minute. So you don't have to be recognized for this one. You're just going to get the chair's attention. Can interrupt, but it must be timely, made at the time of the offense. And I would say I would encourage you to avoid interrupting folks unless the point of order is related to their comments. And I want to say that I don't think of these points of order as being an annoying person who's trying to ensure the rules are followed. I see this as being helpful because the chair's managing a lot at the meeting. And sometimes they might just need a reminder that they missed something, or maybe you just have a different viewpoint about someone's comments. This is what it sounds like. Point of order, the chair says, state your point, so you don't need a second here. And the member, you would say, for example, I am the maker of the motion and should have been recognized first to speak under discussion. And then the chair makes their ruling. The chair needs to make a ruling. In this case, the chair likely would go, oh, right, you're right. Go ahead, you have the floor. Chairs, if you're unsure, you can ask for brief at ease in the meeting and consult with your parliamentarian, your clerk, possibly a colleague. Again, that's a short pause in the meeting. I think these are really helpful because I've seen how sometimes a short break can really help the meeting proceed more swiftly. So if you need help, phone a friend. And before we get to appeal, let's stay here for a minute. Also, you can ask the group. So if, for example, let's say someone's, one of the council members is talking and they're kind of veering like a little off topic. And so another council member says, point of order, I feel like these comments aren't germane to the motion we're considering right now. And Chair, you're like, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what I think here. So she could say, so I'd like to bring a vote to the body and have the group decide if the comments are germane or not. And so that is a totally okay thing to do. So now we're going to talk about, okay, so say that scenario happened. Say someone was going a little off topic, another member calls them out, the chair goes ahead and makes a decision. Let's say that she says, I think those comments do pertain for this reason. I'm going to, speaker, please continue with your comments. And you're the one who brought up the point of order and you're like, they're not relevant. They're not relevant. You don't get to argue with the chair, but you can appeal the chair's decision if you disagree with them. And Jurassic Parliament feels like this is kind of a powerful thing. It is a powerful thing. If you have a chair who's not being fair and impartial, if you have a chair who is showing favoritism, this is a tool that the members have to kind of call them on that and challenge their ruling. So again, I hope this isn't happening a lot at your meetings, but it's good for you to know about. So if the chair makes a ruling and you disagree with them, don't argue with them. Arguments are not a thing at these meetings. The chair could just say, would you like to appeal this ruling? And then the chair is going to facilitate a vote. Now, both of your bodies have special rules about this that differ from Robert's rules, and say that there's no debate on this appeal. Roberts allows some debate. And my memory is that in your council rules say that a second is not needed to appeal, but I think your planning commission rules require a second, if my memory is serving me right. So just know, again, I'm hoping you don't need to appeal anyone, but there are some slight differences in how you handle this, and it's not debatable. So the chair would just say, would you like to appeal my decision? And then the chair is going to facilitate the vote. The question is, shall the decision of the chair be sustained? The wording is kind of formal, but shall it be sustained? And then you're going to vote. A tie vote sustains the chair. The chair's ruling stands. If a tie vote takes a majority to overturn the chair's decision. Okay? So this is a process, again, that's important for you to be aware of as members, important for you to be aware of as chairs. Hope it's not a common occurrence. There are, this is another cheat sheet. Is this the one I have with me? Yes. This is the cheat sheet that I have a few laminated copies with me. I'll hand to a couple of our mayor and two other folks here, because this is a lot that we're covering tonight. And these cheat sheets do have some helpful language that might be helpful to bring these to a meeting. So if something comes up, you have it. Okay. Our last section is public comment. This is a really important part of your meetings. We saved it for last. Save the best for last. So let's talk a little bit about public comment at your meetings. I might be looking for a little information from you about how this is going at your meetings. But first, a disclaimer that Robert's Rules of Order doesn't have much to say about public comment. So what I'm sharing with you today are some best practices and advice we have based on our experience working with local government agencies for around 20 years here. But you're not going to necessarily find this in Robert's Rules. So let's talk a little bit about your meetings. So your meetings are business meetings. They're not meetings of the public. They're meetings of the Planning Commission or of the City Council that the public is invited to attend, right? So the point of the public comment is it's allowing you to become informed about the public's views before you make your recommendations or decisions, but it should be carefully structured. And I think something I want to emphasize here is we're talking about your business meetings. These are your regular council meetings, your committee meetings where you're providing recommendations, your planning commission meetings, where it sounds like you meet once a month to make decisions. So keep this all in context, because clearly getting the public's input on your issues is one of the most important things to do, right? Because you're representing your community in your positions. But and I'll touch on this at the end too, there's a lot of other outlets for public input, right? Open houses, community forums. I've seen this in our city. In fact, we had one a couple weekends ago where there was a community meeting on a kind of a hot political issue in our community. So it wasn't a council meeting. They scheduled a separate meeting, separate place for the community to come in a more open and natural and organic conversation with the community about these issues. There's an absolute need in place for those kinds of conversations and your need for input. But at your business meetings, we do encourage you to put some parameters around the public comment, in part to ensure that you can get to the business of the city. So the courts have found that local governments can limit the time, place, and manner of public comment, but the restrictions have to be viewpoint neutral and respect those First Amendment protections. However, attendees don't have the right to disrupt a meeting, though typically words themselves have not been considered a disruption. So just being aware, and again, this is a time when you can turn to your city attorney for some assistance, but if you have some really volatile comments or possibly a little bit of a physical disruption, that's when it would be good to check to see. You don't want to be shutting people's comments down or asking them to leave the room. You don't want to be doing that lightly, because that's a significant thing to remove someone from a public meeting or to prohibit their comments in a meeting. So just want you to have awareness. And the courts have been pretty forgiving in this area. In fact, did you receive any of the Zoom bombing? You did. I'm so sorry. I know a lot of communities did, and a lot of communities really tightened their public comment rules. In fact, I spoke to a council member from a community where they actually stopped their verbal public comments, which seems so unfortunate to me, but I think that was upsetting to folks. So there's some challenges here, but having some limitations is good. So just not around the content. So it's important when folks come into your meeting room. I'm sure you have some folks who come to many meetings, maybe the folks with us tonight. And so they kind of know the drill, right? They know where to stand. They know how much time they have, but you might have people coming into the room who have no idea. So being really clear with them, having the chair say, I think at the beginning of the meeting, when the public comment can be taken, or near the beginning of the meeting, and then maybe stating some of the guidelines where they stand. Maybe some of this is in your agenda too, or I'm sure it's in a number of places, but it's just an important thing to remember to help these folks out who are being brave and coming to speak to you. So the public should be addressing their comments to the group and really to the chair, ideally. So it wouldn't be appropriate for them to be turning and kind of facing the audience as they're commenting. I've seen some folks do that. The city I work for, that would be something where the chair could say, please address your comments to the city council, to me and the city council. So that's something I would encourage. We don't recommend dialoguing. And this is hard because people often are coming sincerely wanting information, but there are some challenges with dialoguing. One of the biggest ones is it's hard to be consistent. And my next slide is it's really important to be consistent with how you treat people who come to your meetings, no matter what their viewpoints are, no matter if they've been here 100 times or 0 times before. And I think dialoguing, so I think if you're going to dialogue with one person, you need to be willing to dialogue with all people. And I think that's a challenging thing to be consistent with. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute, but let's keep moving through these. Discourage demonstrations. So, clapping and booing can be pretty distracting. So maybe encouraging some more passive ways to show support, like raising hands. Being consistent with time limits is important. Again, you're looking to treat folks the same way. So that's the goal. And then do not allow remaining time to be donated. Do you allow people to donate time? No, that's great. That's complicated. Let me see. Yeah, bottom line, be consistent. So something I want to mention about the dialoguing as well. So I think it's totally appropriate for the mayor to state some brief factual information that is helpful If, for example, if they're saying, I'm not sure if this will be discussed tonight, but I'm speaking, the chair could say, yes, this is on our agenda. Brief factual information. For more involved responses, I would highly encourage, and maybe you're already doing this, ask staff, say, staff, can you please, connect with this individual and make sure you follow up with them to answer their questions. It's really tempting when you have staff in the room to call them up and have them answer the questions on the spot. I really discourage that. I think that puts a lot of pressure on staff. And again, there's this consistency thing where maybe with one question that would be fine, but another one that might be challenging. So while tempting, I'd highly encourage you to encourage offline connection. Maybe it's even in the back of the room or outside in the hallway. And also acknowledging this is it's hard. It's hard when people come asking for answers, and it feels hard to not give them exactly what they need in that moment. But it's not always possible. And I would say your regular meetings is not the best time to do that. So what can you do when you're sitting up here listening to people's passionate public comments? These are probably obvious, but let's just talk about them for a minute. Give your attention. Show them that you're listening to them. Being aware of your facial expression. This is one I have to work on. What are you grimacing? maybe try not to grimace. And then, like I said, explaining that while it's not a time for dialogue, that you do want to help them get their questions answered, and you'll make sure that staff connect with them. At the end of the comment period, I think it's nice for the chair to thank the public commenters, and I think it can even be helpful to say, like, we appreciate hearing comments about X, Y, and Z, to kind of really let them know that they were heard. These are some don'ts. We don't recommend back and forth dialogue, showing favoritism or preference for commenters, and putting staff on the spot. Like I mentioned before, I think it's important to put some context around this. You should be getting input. You can be doing that through surveys. You can be doing that through some meetings outside of your regular business meetings that are have a more flexible format. Yes?
Just a question about if you have a topic and somebody wants to, they've spoken and they want to get back up and speak again, like they heard something somebody else said and they want to, add on. What do we do about that?
Yeah, so what are your rules? And this is good because you're actually bringing up another point I wanted to make, so thank you for the question. What do your rules allow? Do they allow for comment at various points in your meetings at the top and then like on each agenda regular business item? Okay, so the same person can talk multiple times, but you're saying coming up twice in the same public. Well, I would say in general, I guess, unless it's allowed in your rules, I would say that seems unfair to me. They could come up then like so many times at your meeting, right? Which could then be kind of dominating. So the city I work for, we would not allow that. They could come up under each opportunity for comments and speak on those various issues, but not multiple times in one of those segments. And I think, kind of to your point, something that I've seen happen when I've been watching some not your meetings, but other cities' meetings, is when there's a lot of when there's interaction, like dialogue with members of the public, and then they go and sit down, and then the council's discussing something, and then sometimes they think they can interject. And that's fair. It's like, well, I'm here and this is that's really not okay though, because you were elected or appointed to represent them and be the decision makers on these issues. And so again, it is ultimately your meeting, though their input is valued. So I think having some clear boundaries here helps everyone. I also want to note another comment about point of order. Point of order is not something you can use for those in the public, and it's also not something they can use towards you. So that's just for the members. I also should mention that the chair, sorry, I'm going back a step here. The chair does not need to use a point of order. The chair just gets to call things out of order as part of their responsibility. But if you feel like the chair is out of order as a member, you can raise a point of order against them. So that's a good distinction to make. Anything else that's happening in public comment that you want to talk about at all? Touch on? No. Okay. All right. Well, I was kind of speeding through this because I was worried I was going to go over time, but we're going to be ending a little early actually, which is great. So these were kind of the outcomes we were looking for today. So applying the principle that the authority of the group is more important than any single individual. Hopefully we You got that point. Following best practices for discussion. So you have some new knowledge about what those rules are and can try implementing those in your various commission and committee meetings. Responding to disorder or difficult people, which can be both members and potentially members of the public. Making motions, running effective public comment, and making better decisions in your role. Again, I'm hopeful all of this helps. I believe that the city did purchase some copies of this book. So if you would like a copy and don't have one, see Michelle. It's a helpful tool. But I also want to highlight something real quick, which is know your own rules. So you saw in the hierarchy, they are above Robert's rules. And so they're smaller documents. And it might be good to look through those if you haven't done that recently. Just get familiar with those. That's a good starting point. Jurassic Parliament does have a newsletter and does have some useful blog posts and online training. So if you're interested in that, come up and you're welcome to put your name on the sign-up sheet here. Otherwise, I really appreciate your time. It is meaningful that you are all here newly into 2026, trying to kind of ensure you've got some good governance and structure for your meetings. That is heartening. So thank you very much. Appreciate it. And that's it. Any other business? All right, meeting adjourned.